there. I'm sorry, Lisa. Indianapolis. Alex, is it cold there or probably a little bit. Iowa, not today. Well, that's good. Iowa, I am sure it is cold in Iowa. New Jersey, Oregon, it's definitely cold. California, well, it depends in California, right? In Ventura, is it cold or is it warmer? Honestly, it's not that it matters, okay? I just always prefer warm weather. So if I know you're in warm weather, then I just feel better. It is good to be here with all of you. If you are new to Multicultural Classroom or to any of our workshops, then welcome. It's great to have you here. I am excited to be here with each and every one of you. Wishing this was in person, but understanding that being virtual is great too, and that we can still connect and chat it up. Let me just make sure I've got everything I need here. Appreciate all of you who have your cameras on. It's not a requirement, but it is very much appreciated. We are going to get into this because I have been very ambitious. For those of you whom I talked to about this webinar, then you know I am being very ambitious this evening. I am covering a whole lot because I just think it's that important. I think it matters that much. I really want all of us in here to think differently, to stretch our minds and stretch our thinking so that we can do an even better job teaching about Black history and with Black history in mind, but most importantly, with intention. So I am Lorena Germán. I'm co-founder of Multicultural Classroom. I am also the director of education here, the director of academics. And my role here is essentially these great things. I get to teach and work with teachers virtually, but also in person through professional development. I also speak and I write. So you may be here because you've heard of some of our books, and that's great. Tonight, our focus is very much teaching about global Black history. And like it says there, it's with intention. I want to be super focused on what it is. And so I want to go over what our objectives are. First, we're going to deconstruct some problematic approaches to teaching during Black History Month. We're going to consider new themes, text pairings, the fun stuff with a lot of books and things. I'm also going to share with you some scholars that you should be considering. Hopefully you've heard of some, and hopefully you haven't heard of some, so that it feels like, okay, I'm okay. I know some of these, and like, oh, wow, here are some new names. And then we're also going to share with you how to continue this conversation and join our team and our community and be a part of it all with us. Some quick announcements. First, you might want to take a screenshot of something, and we are generally okay with that, but we really want to make sure that you understand that all of this is very much our intellectual property. I want you to cite us when you talk about us, whether you mention my name, Lorena Germán, or you mention Multicultural Classroom. Either one is fine, but just make sure that you do cite where you're getting your thinking and your information. Yes, Amy, thank you. If you are out in the social world, we are live streaming this too. So for those of you in Zoom, you get direct access to us, but the folks who are out in the socials, if you are still interested in catching the recording, maybe you can't see the whole thing, then go ahead and still join and register, and you can use that QR code right there and catch the recording. In the Zoom is also where I'll be taking questions. So if you're watching, let's say on TikTok, I will not be able to see your questions because my attention is here. And then lastly, some of you could benefit of some PDP points or some contact hours or things like that. Then please email hello@multiculturalclassroom.com, a very long email, but we will send you a certificate for tonight. Okay, so if you weren't expecting that and this is just the cherry on top of the cake, well, yay. What day is today? Monday. Happy Monday to you. Okay, that's it for my announcement. Oh, yeah.
I'll just add real quick. Those of you who are joining via social media, if you have questions, we will be extracting that, and I will direct that to Lorena if we have the opportunity.
Oh, that's good. That's very helpful. Thank you. And that is Roberto Germán, also part of Multicultural Classroom and co-founder. And executive director and also writer and also professional development provider. And so he'll be managing the socials and getting questions. So if you're out there, fear not, but just know that I won't see them right away. All right, I will keep going now because I can't wait to get in here. So some of you are like, well, what's wrong? What am I doing wrong? Or what is it that I am missing? Because I cover all of the basics, right? And the issue is that the basics, depending on how you're doing this, might be offering and creating stereotypical depictions. They might be sharing some redundant ideas, characters, and stories. They might be sharing some repetitive readings. You might have some repetitive topics that people already kind of know, right? So it might be a little repetitive and redundant and stale. Sorry, I lost something there. Anyway, so repetitive readings, redundant ideas, characters, and even stories. You might be, and I'll get into all of these in a second. And sometimes what's happening is that we're actually not expanding students' understandings because they come in ready to learn more about Black history and Black folks in general, and we give them and we reiterate what they have heard. Also, often what we do is we go and we focus on history and we do not spend enough time on present day studies. What's happening right now, like the history that's being made right now. And last but not least, there's an over focus often on pain, suffering, and struggle. I'm going to break all of these down in a second, but this is the gist of what is often wrong and lacking and things that we need to revive and shake up. And if you are like, I think I do some of that, great. It's all right. This is a no judgment zone. Great, because, well, let me put it this way. It's great that you're here. Not great that you do it, but it's great that you're here because we are definitely going to go over some things that are going to be really useful and helpful. So let's talk about some of those stereotypical depictions. For example, if when we are talking and studying Black books and Black topics and Black history and Black studies, your depictions and your presentations of Black folks are always in relation to protesting, to fighting injustice, generally negative and painful portrayals. Maybe you might be often talking about them in the context of either being violent or experiencing violence. Then we are offering young people stereotypical depictions. If after 3 years of education, let's say middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at your school, these are the type of narratives, and we're going to get into narratives in a second. These are the types of narratives that they have learned and studied and read about, then that's what they're walking away from. Right? That's what they're walking away with. They're walking away with an understanding that Black folks are always protesting. They are always involved in violence or issues of justice and or injustice. And we know that that's not the totality of any group's experience. We've got some redundant ideas, characters, and stories. We see here, right, and voices. We see here a picture that needs no explanation because we all know who that is. And so when we continue to focus on Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, slavery, overcoming racism, and protesters, narrowly focused on that and civil rights, then again, we are cementing some of these stereotypes, okay? If you have, I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable in the chat. You can let us know. Like, you know what? I'm guilty of doing some of this. Or, I've got some colleagues who do this. Or as a department, we've done this historically. That's all right. You're not alone. What I will say is that there's this very important work by Dr. Eve Tuck. And I've talked about her before. And some of you, like Holly, is shaking her head because she knows we've talked about this and she's learned about this. And Dr. Eve Tuck is an Indigenous scholar. And some of her, well, there's one, it's such like important, critical, seminal work of hers. And in it, she talks about this idea of incorporating joy alongside with the pain. making sure that we don't have deficit narratives and narratives of always being conquered. And while there she is talking about in her work, she's talking about indigenous people and indigenous research. This is applicable really to any people group that lives in and is put in the margins. We also have so many repetitive readings, right? Letter from Birmingham Jail, I Am Every Good Thing if you're in elementary, Beloved or The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison in high school, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Are these books and texts bad? Of course not. They're amazing. They're powerful. And there's also so much more. There is so much more. And I know that if you're in this Zoom, it's because you probably already know some of that, right? And so some of you are like, yes, correct. I got it. But I want to make sure that we're on the same page because not everybody here is on that page, right? And so my point here tonight is not throw these things out necessarily. You might simply want to pair it better, and you might want to replace some of these. But I'll get into that in just a second, okay? So one of the other issue is lack of present day studies, right? So we focus just on conflict and racism. We then unfortunately sometimes simply talk about the strong Black woman trope, okay? And we focus on books from a historical time period, not right now. So maybe we select books from a period of enslavement or a period post-enslavement, maybe during the Reconstruction, maybe during the Civil Rights Movement, right? And so we go thematically towards time periods instead of thinking about what are people writing about right now? What are they writing about today? What are some of the issues present in this particular community? As a result, we hyper focus on the 3 S's or S cubed for any mathematicians here. Sadness, struggle, suffering. We focus on how sad some of these stories are. And or we just share sad stories. It's always about struggle. In an effort, which is what Dr. Eve Tugg talks about, in a concerted and authentically good effort to appeal to our students' sense of justice, we want them to understand the struggles. We want them to understand what has happened that shouldn't have happened, right? We appeal to them or try to do so by demonstrating these stories that focus on sadness and hardship and suffering and struggle. But what ends up happening is that that's all we focus on in that effort to get them to have empathy and or sympathy, right? And so we focus on sadness, we think about struggle, and in the process, it's all about suffering. And so we focus on those 3 S's. And then very commonly, we rarely include global connections. Rarely include global connections during this period. We focus on the US-centered African Americans. When you're looking at the global connection, sure, you can talk about slavery, but you don't have to necessarily. And when we might not talk about global connection, but maybe we just talk about like the transatlantic slave trade instead of considering all these other movements and migrations of Black people across the world outside of that, the transatlantic slave trade. I hope y'all are with me so far. Give me a thumbs up if you're here. If you're like, yes, I'm in. Okay. Oh, great. Look at that. I see all of you. This was just published, y'all, on Friday. On Friday. I don't know if you saw this. This is in New York. So if you're in New York, let us know in the chat. A 200-year-old underground railroad stop was just discovered. That is amazing. And so that's what I mean by saying that we have to talk about present day Black studies. This is not simply a month to focus on Black history. And we all know we can focus on this all year long. I know, and you know. But this is a great opportunity this month to say, hey, I have an excuse to do a little extra and be a little extra. Great. And so this, right, we have to communicate to our young people that this idea of Black studies and Black discovery and Black joy and Black resistance, it is a living, a breathing element and aspect of life right now in our society. We are still, just on Friday, discovering still underground railroad stops. That's amazing. That moves me. I saw that and I said, oh my goodness, this is why I've been working on this workshop, y'all, every day, because I'm like, there's too much to say. And so here is just one more thing. And so because of all of this, right, education about Black life and Black history, particularly in the United States, in K through 12. So if you're taking notes, that's the context for tonight's workshop. We are focusing on Black history and Black education and Black life in the United States, primarily K through 12. If you're a higher ed person, that's wonderful. This will all apply to you, okay? I just don't necessarily have too many examples for higher ed, but it's all applicable. So here we go. Here is what we need to do. If you're a note taker, this is your moment, okay? We must, because I'm going to break down each one of these bullet points, work on intentional anti-racist teaching. I'm going to define all of this for us, okay? It is important for us to work on anti-racist teaching, and I'll show you that in a second. This is not about politics. I'll show you. Pair and strategically include texts that teach truth. I'll explain to you what that is as well. We must challenge ourselves and students to learn more. The older we are in this room, that means the more we have learned already from the current systems in place, which means we have more to unlearn. We have to, or we must, incorporate new thematic studies in our courses. We have to find ways to offer more holistic learning about Black studies, okay? And we have to be more intentional and diverse in our designs, even school events. Here we go. Ready? Let's talk a little bit about anti-racist counter-narratives. This is going to be the simplest way to think about truth and anti-racist teaching. And I know that this is a very big red flag in many places, particularly the entire country. And we can use other language, y'all. Don't let the language and the wording be the hill that you die on. It is not worth it. I'm telling you right now. If you can't call it anti-racist counter-narratives, don't. Just call it our next unit. It doesn't matter. As long as you're doing the work, as long as you're teaching the material. If you got to change some of this language, it doesn't matter, okay? So here's let me break down this idea. A narrative, as we know, is a story. It is an understanding about events or a concept, and it is told from a specific point of view. If you're an ELA teacher, then you get that, right? We know if it's in first person or second person or third person. A narrative, another way to think about this is a general understanding. We have a general understanding about either this group of people or this idea or, like this concept. There is a narrative about a group, or there might be a narrative about an event. And then counter, for the purposes of this particular idea of anti-racist counter narratives, means to speak in opposition of or to, and to refute or negate. So this is to oppose. Therefore, here's our definition. Again, if you're a note taker, you're in your glory right now. Therefore, an anti-racist counter-narrative is one that focuses on a narrative from the point of view of a marginalized group, refuting and opposing a racist narrative. An anti-racist counter-narrative is one that focuses on a narrative from the point of view of a marginalized group or person, refuting and opposing a racist narrative. Thumbs up if you're with me. I haven't lost anybody so far. Great. So, how does this work in a classroom? Let me just explain that this is in and of itself its own workshop, which I've done as a workshop. And I have elements of this and a really thorough breakdown of this in one of our courses. And so tonight I've got to be, again, I'm being ambitious. I have to gloss over this, okay? But here's what I will say. A quick framework of how you can do some of this work, okay? Number one, name the racist narrative via research alongside your students. I'm going to give you examples in a second. Then you're going to center the voices of the marginalized. You might do that via a book. You might do that via a movie. You might do that via mathematical research if this is a math course. And then 3, you're going to analyze those messages of the marginalized. How are they refuting that racist narrative? That is your anti-racist counter narrative. I'm going very quickly, I know. Here are two examples. Racist narrative. Immigrants are bad, they're thieves and criminals. Has anybody heard this? I'm definitely being silly. Anti-racist counter narrative. They are humans in search of quality life experiences that are hardworking. So because we know that that's true, right? We would be finding texts, even if we don't want to find, texts that are catering to this. You can simply find them and their own voices, and they will lead us to this type of counter narrative. It might not be these exact same words. And students can actually be the ones who identify what that counter narrative is. They can work in partners after reading 2 or 3 pieces of text of whatever sort and say, what do you think is that message? That's the analysis. Here's another racist counter narrative on the right. Women in general are emotional and dramatic. Now, this isn't racist, this is gendered, but I want to offer this as a way to, kind of really get it clearly. You could do the same by saying Black women are emotional and dramatic and angry, right? Anti-racist counter narrative, or in this case, feminist counter narrative. Women are smart, hardworking, and worthy of a good life, for example. Or women can be leaders and they are intelligent. Y'all with me? If you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat, okay? For our members who are here of My Classroom Gold, we're going to discuss more of that at our office hours, okay? We'll talk about the that framework and break it down a little further. And obviously, if any other questions come up while we're going through this, please go ahead and jot it down. Do not try to ask me now because I'm not going to be able to remember all that. All right, let's talk some pairings. Here's some fun stuff. I'm going to cover elementary, middle, and high school, okay? What's important about these pairings is that they are actually all anti-racist counter narratives. So what you have on the left is not necessarily a racist narrative, okay? We just have this little book, this great little book, classic, that a lot of people have read and teach, The Little Engine That Could. This little book that is often, if not taught, certainly found in many homes. So what happens is that you've got these animals, I'm sorry, not animals, this train, this little engine, who is personified as a fighter and thriving and striving. We could do the same by featuring Black characters. There's Jabari Jumps. Now, there's critique of Jabari Jumps because that author is not a Black author, and that's true. And I still think it's a great, sweet little book. You've got a little boy doing regular things, right? He doesn't fall into the criteria of some of those other characters that I described before. He's not in pain. He's not suffering. We're not in the middle of a civil rights movement. He's not an activist. He is doing everyday, ordinary things. And he gets to be a hero because he figures out how to jump into the pool. And you see him featured with family in the pool. His dad is there and present, and his sister is there and present. And so that alone makes this an anti-racist counter narrative because it normalizes Black fatherhood in the home and a little Black boy doing regular schmegular things. And then we've got Super Sema. If you've never heard of Super Sema, don't beat yourself up about it. She's not very well known. She is a character. I wrote TV, but really actually YouTube. Lupita Nyong'o is actually one of the producers or the executive producer of the show. It is the most adorable cartoon you're going to see on YouTube, featuring a super cool scientist, African child. Her setting is in Africa. Can't remember which country. I think it might be Zimbabwe, but I might be thinking of a different book. So maybe this is somewhere else. Regardless, we have Super Sema, and that's a completely an anti-racist super narrative because we have stereotypes and very limited perceptions of children in Africa, right? If we think of them, then we know what stereotypes might come to mind, what images come to mind. And Super Sema in this cartoon refutes all of them, every single one of them. If you're teaching about Paul Revere's Ride and we're talking about the American Revolution, right? This might be 4th, 5th grade. Then a great book to pair with it is The Undefeated, because we teach about the American Revolution and that period of colonial America very narrowly from the colonialist perspective. And we rarely are able to include texts and books, not able, but maybe don't have access to or are unaware of, or forget because it's our own upbringing. Remember what I talked about? Us having to undo our own stuff too. And so The Undefeated, among many other texts. If you have some more that speak to this particular time period, drop them in the chat, okay? So this one is a time period one, but this one is about pairing. All right. And while we're looking at historical characters, what we're doing is saying, hey, Paul Revere wasn't the only brave person at the time. Now we're moving to middle school. The Outsiders. It continues to be taught throughout middle schools all across the United States. You can pair or replace with two of these. These both are by Jason Reynolds. Now, are there other choices that can be made? Absolutely. What I was thinking about was two things. One, bringing in Black voices, and two, changing even the perspective through which we read The Outsiders and some of these quote unquote classics. So if you teach The Outsiders, right, you might want to make it a reading where you do excerpts from The Outsiders and put it in conversation with, juxtapose it to either Ghost or Long Way Down. Put them in conversation. Have our main characters talk to one another. What about their time period? What is similar in their life? What is very different? What would it look like if Ghost were a white boy? What would it look like if one of the Outsiders was a Black boy? How would that have been? Here's another one. Lord of the Flies continues to be taught in middle, but also in high school. And while The Marrow Thieves is not a Black text, it's just a really good pairing. So I couldn't help myself. The Marrow Thieves is one to consider, to put into conversation with Lord of the Flies. You have very similar context going on here. Then you have Pet, which is a very different book, a very original, unique, uniquely written. As you can see, many awards. And it could be a great pairing with Lord of the Flies to look at Lord of the Flies very differently. There's also The Ear, the Eye, and the Arm by Nancy Farmer, which I've talked about before, not known as much, but I think it's actually a really fun read. And it can be scary, and it's really great for like 6th and 7th grade. And you could even make The Ear, the Eye, and the Arm the center text, the anchor text, and bring in excerpts of Lord of the Flies. What you have in The Ear, the Eye, and the Arm are those 3 kids that you see running, and they have been kidnapped. And now they're on the run, trying to find their way back home. And so they're not lost on an island, but they are lost in this country. And it's a futuristic Africa. So it's set in a futuristic, I can't remember what year, African nation. So here we have a global perspective as well. Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. An interesting pairing could be with our Afro-Caribbean author here, Elizabeth Acevedo, the Poet X. Raise your hand or let me know in the chat if you have read this before or if you know it well. You can also feature some of her spoken word, which you can find on YouTube. And so it will bring this text alive. You can have conversations here about, self-understanding, identity. There's that line in Leaves of Grass where he says, I will celebrate, or let me celebrate myself, something along those lines. I can't remember. Well, you can look at this book and say, what happens when you're not celebrated and you have to fight to try to celebrate yourself? There are ways to put these in conversation. If you have not read James, I am telling you right now, make it a read for this year. If all else fails and you leave this webinar and you don't know what to do because I gave you too much, read James by Percival Everett. Hands down, excellent. It was the National Book Award winner, Pulitzer Prize winner, and Steven Spielberg is going to make this into a movie. Although I think he should work with Jordan Peele, only because I could see him taking it to another level. Pair this absolutely with Huckleberry Finn. James is from the perspective of Jim. And so you have 2 books that were written in conversation. It is amazing. Such a powerful read. It absolutely lends itself to an anti-racist reading of Huckleberry Finn. Not that that book is anti-racist. The reading, the critical reading that you do would be an anti-racist read. Not too many people know about Sophia Thakur. I love this book. Somebody give this heart a pen. First of all, that cover is stunning. You can find her online sharing her spoken word. This is a collection of poems. So you can pair her with Robert Frost, or you can pair her with Emily Dickinson, both American authors. She is based out of the UK, which might be why you don't know her. And so here you, and absolutely written for high school. And so here you have a global voice, right? We often don't hear poetry from Black women, young women abroad in Europe. And here we have this unique voice to American schools and education that you can pair with some of these classics, some great poetry by these two. Oh, I could do this. I could do this all night, okay? Here is another one, The Crucible, because some of us just won't let it go. Here are two possible pairings. And if you are risky, then you can replace, okay? Not because The Crucible is terrible, but because something for us to think about is, look at how much shelf time The Crucible has gotten. Look at how much curriculum time it has gotten. Look at how much just a pedestal time it has received. Maybe it's time for us to reconsider and just take a breather and stretch ourselves and stretch our kids. Raybearer, written by an author in Ghana. The Gilded Ones, written by an American author, but the setting and the context might as well be an African nation. It's like a mythical African setting. Both of them, look at these covers, beautiful. So you have two women main characters as well, both of them facing systems and injustice and having to make a way for themselves. In The Gilded Ones, I would say that that character is way more closely associated to like The Crucible, but also you could pair The Gilded Ones with The Scarlet Letter. Okay, I could see The Gilded Ones like excellently paired with The Scarlet Letter, if that's one that you're still teaching. Okay, here we go. Now, I know people want texts and they want, books. That's why I started there, so that your heart could calm down. But what I want us to understand is that what you teach, meaning the books, is not as important as how you teach it. So that framework I gave you with the anti-racist counter narrative is really important, obviously, right? That's a way for you to, or a how for you to teach this stuff. But I want to talk about themes as well. What is the context in which you're teaching these books? And even if you're not going to change any of your books, you could keep a lot of your same books, especially if you're already teaching Black authors. But let's look at some different ways of having conversations around these books. I'm going to list now themes, different ways that you can either, and these could be for a particular unit or these could be for a whole year. Here's the first one. Many of us talk about the American dream. How about we talk about redefining the American dream or questioning the American dream? We can focus on cultural perceptions of success and how African Americans have often redefined what success has to be and the American dream has to be based on what was available to them. And that is how they have created new conditions in order to survive and thrive. One potential text that you can use to explore this is Nella Larsen's Passing. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. I think that it's a really, oh my gosh, it's just so, it's really dense, I think. It's very thin, it's very short read, but it's dense because it grapples with so much. There is a Netflix film version, which I think is spectacular and very close to the book. And so if you're like, I don't know if I have time to read a whole novel, well, you can watch this film and think about how do you put it in conversation with the things you're already reading. A stronger theme. We are also in the future. The we here is Black people. And so we're going to focus on science fiction and Afrofuturist literature to explore new voices, interdisciplinary ideas, ethics, and even like, how do we see Black people exploring Typically, the sci-fi and Afrofuturist characters are on some type of mission. They've got to solve some injustice usually. They have an adventure along the way, and they have to always overcome ethical dilemmas. That's one of the things that I love about Black sci-fi and Afrofuturism, is that there is always something that they are solving. They are always about the collective, not in a way that is deprecating or, Debbie Downer or super focused on those 3 S's that I mentioned earlier, but usually strength driven and asset based. Here's another one. How about a unit on Black women's voices and demonstrating how they are powerful too? Through this thematic study, you'd focus on books by and about Black women and explore the various ways in which they are honest, thoughtful, creative, powerful, and more, versus the stereotypical angry, struggling, in pain, defeated, and stereotypical. Here is a book I've used in the past. I've used excerpts of this because it's actually in letters. Or I'm sorry, not letters. It's diary entries. Child of the Dark, the diary of Carolina Maria de Jesus. This is based out of Brazil. Here's another global author. This is an older text. I can't remember what year. If somebody could find out what year this was published, I don't remember if it was 70s or 80s, maybe 60s. I doubt it. Y'all, I can't remember. But it's diary entries, so it's very accessible in terms of reading. And it just gives you a very different perspective to what Black experiences we've been exposed to here in the United States. And what is most powerful about this is that all she had was her writing. And that was her currency. And so people in the neighborhood, I'll give you this just because, I'm a nerd. People in her neighborhood, they would do stuff to her and she would be like, I'm going to write about you in my diary. And it would cause so much conflict because people would be like, don't write about me, because there were so many people in her favelas that didn't know how to write. And so this was her currency, her weapon, her agency, her power. And then it gets published, and that is how she's able to move out of poverty. And so we have a tangible example here of a woman who literally used her voice in a powerful way. Another theme could be about solidarity and power. But in this unit, you'd focus on moments in history or stories present day where Black people and individuals or the community partnered with another individual and or community of a different ethnicity or race and overcame and achieved something. So the solidarity piece here is critical because it demonstrates that it is possible to join with others. If you're in the elementary world, you can think of, for example, the book Change Sings by Amanda Gorman. Simple picture book, but it shows this little girl, Black girl, who's like, man, I got to make some changes around this community. And she starts picking people up along the way, and they go and they bring about some change in their community. If you can think of some examples from middle and high school, drop them in the chat. You'd have intentional conversations here about what compromises people have to make, what characters change, what conflicts are addressed, how do they innovate, what do they come up with, what did they have to do that hadn't been done before. Black movement and migration, we rarely teach about this. And why this is important is because movement and migration equals agency. You have the agency to get up and change your situation, to get up and move elsewhere, to get up and follow a dream, chase an adventure, start something new. And so a unit or a year that focuses on movement and migration, Black movement and migration, could be really powerful and really unique. You'd focus on places where Black people have moved from and to geographically, but also maybe there's movement across ideas. There's a spectrum of ideas, and this person started in one place and ended up elsewhere, right? Like a character arc. We can look at various excerpts from Black voices throughout Asia, maybe Black voices throughout Europe, maybe throughout South America. They can compare and contrast voices and narratives. both within that group, but also between the group and US-based voices. To read, for example, about the life of James Baldwin, who lived in the United States, but moved, and not moved permanently, but would go and take trips and stay away over in France for periods of time to find peace from life in the United States, right? There's movement. You've got Trevor Noah coming from South Africa here, and his biography, that one, I think that's the one that's adapted for young readers. So there's one adapted for young readers. In One Crazy Summer, which has also now been adapted into a graphic novel. You've got 3 Black girls who move from one side of the country to another. It's another historical piece, historical fiction, because it has to do with like the Black Panthers. And that in and of itself is often unique and authentic, because we don't read about Panthers in school. This might be the last one, y'all. I can't remember. Again, I tried so much. I did so much. Drop questions in the chat so I can answer. Black family and fatherhood. The other thing I want to notice, and I can go back to if y'all want, but the other thing that I want y'all to notice is how these, in their essence, are anti-racist counter narratives, right? So I'm going backwards for a second. I can't help myself. Black women being powerful completely contradicts the idea that they don't have agency and that they need welfare, that they need governmental support, that they need drugs, that they can't do things on their own, but that in fact they are powerful, right? Those are stereotypes we know. Those are those narratives that exist, whether or not we believe them, they exist. And so, how amazing would it be for us to be able to teach our young people these anti-racist counter narratives, so that when they go out into the world and hear some of these things in society, they know, like, okay, that might be true, but there's also this other truth. Remember how I said truth? This is what I'm talking about. Solidarity and power. Black folks have always worked in solidarity with other movements, with other people groups. That's an anti-racist counter narrative. Black movement of migration. They have agency. They move. They're not just stuck in a place. And then we get to Black family and fatherhood. According to newer studies, Black fathers are more present in the lives of their children, forgive that typo, than any other demographic. Yet the stereotype persists that they are absent and deadbeat parents, deadbeat fathers. Can you design a unit where Black fathers are main characters or important characters, and the students engage in a discussion where they analyze, compare, and contrast them even across texts? Here I have 4 texts that you can use. First, excerpts from Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, his letter, so there's one format, to his son. Chimamanda Adichie, Ngozi Adichie, Purple Hibiscus, it's a letter to her father. In Blue Ink Tears, you have poetry featuring, and poetry that talks about the loss of a father, relationship with the father. And then one of my favorites is Doc Miss-Stuffin's daddy. I thought it was always genius that Doc Miss-Stuffins had her father at home often, and he was a caretaker. He was always present. Let's look at those depictions and what work that might be doing in the eyes and perspective of young viewers. I want to move into some scholars to learn from. And again, I can go back and explain anything that I may have missed that you're like, I have a question, I want more. Dr. James A. Banks, many haven't heard about him. He coined and founded the concept of multicultural education as a framework. So a lot of people talk about multicultural education and they think that it simply means featuring books from around the world. That's incorrect. There is an actual framework for this. There is a body of work for this, and it's led by Dr. James A. Banks. We have Dr. Django Paris, who founded Culturally Sustaining Pedagogies, and it builds off the work of Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings. I haven't mentioned her here because she's so well known, and so I wanted to give time and space to folks that you might not know of. Dr. Jarvis Givens, if you haven't heard of Fugitive Pedagogy, somebody drop a link in there or the book cover in the chat. Really powerful read. His recent publications focus on resistance and teaching. It is apt for this moment that we find ourselves in. Dr. Shamari Reed, based out of New York, he focuses on restorative practices for teachers in their own lives. so that we could actually endure, so that we don't burn out. Dr. Yolanda Seeley-Ruiz, also based out of New York, she has done work around both hip hop pedagogy and also developed theories on the archaeology of self. Like, how do we dig into ourselves in order to work towards racial literacy? And her book, I think it's called Archaeology of Self, comes out this year, 2026. Dr. Stephanie Tolliver and also Dr. Ebony Elizabeth Thomas both focus on speculative methods, meaning how to teach fiction, but their focus is intertwined with Black literature and Black characters. So these are scholars whose articles and books you can access. They are all either online or there are books you can be, on Amazon, at the library. And I'm sharing them because they are living, their work is happening now. And I think that they add a lot of important context, both to practice and content. I know this can feel like a lot. This is where I offer you the chance to be a part of our community. We have a membership called My Classroom Gold, and I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about it, and then we'll get into Q&A and we can keep nerding out. We have office hours weekly where we gather and we unpack stuff. And, like last week, we literally just talked about some of the stuff that's going on and how it's impacting our classrooms. It was just like a breath of fresh air, because sometimes it's very hard to talk to people who are not classroom teachers. You have to explain stuff that to other teachers is just common sense. Like, we just know. And so that way it can be just so soothing. We have positive weekly challenges. We have a private and safe off of social media community chat. We focus on personal, but also professional growth. We have some guests that we're going to be, that are going to be a part of our community. Workshops like this one and others that for those who are not members will be paid, and more. We are going to be starting a book study actually very soon, in the next few weeks. So consider it. Consider taking some time to be a part of our community. And there on the screen, you can see a little bit about what makes us different from other spaces. And what I'll share is that this started for us, and my conversations with other educators, because we felt like some of our online spaces had kind of died. We also are fully aware of how difficult it is to have safe conversations online in public platforms, right? Be it Instagram or Twitter or, Blue Sky, etc., wherever educators are, Facebook. It can be challenging because you can be reported, people can share your stuff. And so we realize that the conversations are needed, right? Like, we still need them. And we need a place for them. And so we created this. We created this to meet teachers where they are. And you don't have to be a classroom teacher. You can just be in the field. You can be an administrator, a counselor. We have counselors. You can be anything that's kind of in the field. We have folks in higher ed who are a part of our community, people who work at the district level. And so, you can just kind of find everything in one place where we have community, we laugh, we get frustrated, we plan, we prep, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it'd be great to have Holly share a little bit.
Oh, yes. Is she here? Can she join us? I should stop sharing. Okay, let me stop sharing for a second.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yay. Oh, hi, everyone. This was amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. Oh, now I'm going to go geek out with my little plan book. I'm just going to go dive in. But can I share a little bit about My Classroom Gold experience? I would really love to. Okay, y'all, I am not one to plug anything because I'm a New Yorker. I trust no one and nothing. But this is one of the realest things I've ever been part of. Just intentional community, a space where we keep it real. We really help each other out. This is some of the best professional and personal in some ways, experiences that I've had as an educator. And I've been educating for 20 years in the public realm. So if you know, you know. Like if you know, you know. I've been in spaces where I've had support. I've been in spaces where I haven't. I'm in a space where thankfully I'm supported again, but it's just that little extra bit, and it's really beautiful. And I walk away with so much more than I ever thought possible, and in manageable, tangible ways. And you feel so good. You're like, I want to do that again. So join. Trust me, it is worth it and beyond worth it. It will bring a friend. Just bring a friend. It's so great. I can't speak more highly of it.
Oh, thank you, Holly. Holly is an important member of our community, and she's been here from the beginning. So thanks for sharing with us. So I'll go back and make some time here. I'm so proud of myself because I really condensed and look at us with time to be able to take questions and chat with folks if they have questions or comments of any sort. Roberto, I'd love to be able to share my screen again. So if that's possible, please. If possible, I'll try. But there's the link in the chat, and I'll put up a QR code if you're interested.
Share the screen.
Thank you.
About 8 minutes.
Yes, correct. I know. The pressure is on. So any thoughts, comments, or questions? I think I can see the chat. I think I'm communicating. Oh, there you go. Okay. Miss Erica, I responded. I hope that's useful. All right. Any thoughts, comments, or questions from anyone?
There was a question earlier from Heather.
Oh, I didn't see.
She had shared that in class, they were talking about ethnicity and had a student on one side of the family that had a family that were slaves and brought over from Africa. And he was unsure about what part of Africa, what is the best way to handle this.
Oh, that's good.
I don't want to ignore it, but unsure how to properly address. Yeah,
that's a great question. So I think
this came up after reading 2 books. Grandfather's Story, which talked about grandfather and his wife immigrating from to the U.S. from Japan.
Okay.
It talks about struggles of immigrants in U.S.
Mm-hmm.
They had a daughter, and then the story continues in Tea with Milk.
Okay.
They moved back to Japan, and the daughter is an immigrant in Japan, and the struggle she had. Talks about ethnicity and nationality.
Okay.
So she brought it to have them find out what their ethnicity is.
Okay.
And that's when the student had mentioned that.
Okay. So that's what I'm going to say. Like, context really matters, right? So it depends on what type of task and assignment you've given. So I think it's hard, and I would recommend against assignments that invite students to search in their history or look at their family records, simply because we do not know what their background is, right? What if they are adopted? And so that might be a trigger of something challenging. And so it could be research projects. That's very different, which might achieve the same means, right? And so you might invite them to select an adult in their life. It could be a parent, it could be a caregiver, it could be a teacher, it could be a neighbor. And what's their history? What's their ancestry? And let that adult take that role on and say, oh, well, this and this and that. And you can invite kids and say, and if you're interested in digging into your own, that's wonderful, right? Because then that child might say, I have access to that information, I will dig in. Or the child might say that response, I don't have that background. Like, we know that we are descendants of enslaved people, but we don't know exactly, where. We don't have a pinpoint in the continent. And so they might just dig into that experience or not want to, and instead focus on an adult in their life, right? So it leaves that space open for kids to have that flexibility to be able to research and do the work without having to be penalized or not be able to complete the task because of something that's completely out of their control. They have no control over their ancestry, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, the context matters. But let's say what's done is done and we're sitting here and the kid is like, oh my goodness, we are descendants of enslaved people. I don't know. And the kid says this in class. I think one of the best ways to address that is to say, oh yeah, I can see how that's a real issue, and then invite them and say, how would you like to take on this assignment, and create that opportunity. Give opportunity and say, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Thank you for bringing that up. How can I help you to get this assignment done? What other strategies do you want to take on? Maybe this is a kindergarten kid. Oh, well, is there a grown-up in your life that you might want to ask this question to? Okay, let's go home and ask, that grown-up that question, right? And just keep it, kind of bring it down to every level and create opportunity for the child to be able to go in different directions. And again, not feel stuck because of something that they don't have any control over. So I hope that answers it for that person. I don't know if I can see any other questions. Oh, okay. Thank you, Ralph. That's a really great point, y'all. Look at that in the chat. That's very helpful. Thank you, Ralph. Parent communication goes a long way. Goes a long, long way. Student who didn't access back home. Oh, yeah. 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 So I think that's pronounced Tamika, if I had to make a guess. So the question is advice for handling a student whose father was denied access back into the United States. So we're talking about immigration and papers in the current, socio-political context. I see a hand, Catherine. I'll take it in a second. I think that sounds like a bigger conversation than just a teacher, right? Like we have to involve a school counselor in here. Administrators need to be made aware so that we can, as an institution, as a school, provide support. And that's important for you as the classroom teacher to keep in mind so that you can make any adjustments that need to be made. I think maybe creating opportunities for check-ins, one-on-one check-ins with all the kids so that we don't single the child out. Depending on the grade, maybe there's exit slips, Friday check-in where it's a private time to talk to me so that they don't feel pressure and it doesn't feel again like they're being singled out. But there are multiple opportunities maybe throughout the week for kids to share and for that student to be able to share how they're doing and how they're feeling. It might explain to you some of the behavior that you've noticed. But this is what we're all dealing with, right? This is the tension, the stress, the anxiety that we're dealing with across schools in the country. Catherine.
Thank you. I really appreciate this webinar because there's not enough out there to really teach the truth as opposed to just like you said, glossing over.
He's good.
My son. But one of the things I wanted to share is at the school I currently work at, they do a multicultural day once a year where the teachers get to choose any country, bio, whatever to focus on. And I love it, but they make a huge deal of it once a year. And last year I did Ghana, and I taught my kids, 4th grade I teach, about the Atlantic slave trade. So they did their own research, and I was like, "We're doing it." 'Cause I'm the only Black teacher at my school, and it's hard. It's really difficult because there's the people, right, that are like, "Yeah, we want to." All the kids know about Martin Luther King, so I just totally glossed over him today. I mean, this month I was like, "Yeah, we're not, we're not going there." So we were talking about people that are not. That schools don't talk about. And, but it definitely has been, I just kind of was like, well, we're just going to do it and see what happens. But I appreciate that there's this community that is really, like I said in the chat, my credential program was all about anti-racist, anti-bias.
Good.
Dismantling the deep structures in school. And I felt that. And so, even though I was told that my contract is not being renewed for next year, I was okay with it because I know that my mission, my work was temporary anyway there. And so now I venture on to move to spread anti-racist, anti-bias love.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing. And I'll add this. I know we're done, but I'll just say this thing. I think it is so important for us to keep in mind the overrepresentation of some characters and topics, like I said earlier, and to make space, right, to balance this out. And so for you to gloss over MLK, I think is okay, because they will absolutely hear about him. I mean, there's a Martin Luther King Jr. Day, right? And so I think it's okay for him to be glossed over at times during Black History Month, and or taught in context. He was part of SNCC. There were other movements happening at the same time, right? So that it doesn't become that he is this one-time, one-person hero movement. And so I think that that's really critical. And I know that you are, I hear you saying that you're the only. I know we have some folks here who are also the only. I just saw one of our current clients and partners, I think is Erica. I think she's here. Erica, you can wave. There she is. And so I know that, she can relate. But I will stop here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Check the chat so that you get the things that you need. And definitely stay tuned. Make sure you're following us on social media so that you can hear about the different ones that we have coming up. There are some more of these webinars, I mean. And certainly, if you need to communicate with us directly, hello@multiculturalclassroom.com. You can also just message us in any one of those social media platforms. We appreciate you being here. And I'll just say that I am so encouraged that so many of you came out at a time where it is risky to have these conversations and to do this learning. This means a lot. Why am I getting a thumbs up? No, it's thumbs up. There you go. Thumbs up. My Zoom does these things. There you go. So I really do appreciate your presence here tonight. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Good evening. God bless.
Oh, look, thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, it is, Miss Helena. Ever evolving. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, Ali, yes. Yep, understood. Understood. Oh, yay. Thank you, Tamika. I can't. Oh, there they are. Yes, yes. All right. Well, good night, folks. Good night, Peggy. I see you there. Thanks for being here.
Yes, yes. Thanks for being here. Good night, everybody. Lorena and Hart, you can stay on so we could do a brief debrief.
Okay. I have moved everybody to the waiting room.
Yes, okay. Hold on. I think we're still live on.
Let's see. Yeah, it looks like